Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Todd McFarlane Day. I've talked about the debate about how to pronounce names. Apparently it's Todd McFarlane and not Todd McFarlane. The debate is still open if anyone else wants to comment on it, but until I receive more information on that, I will stick with McFarlane, or I will try to as much as possible. So we're looking at the next issue of Spider-Man that he did in the early 90s. That is issue 3, cover dated, October 1990. Not going to spend too much time on the cover other than to say, remember that this series was basically given to McFarlane, not just to draw, but to write, where he was expecting maybe something a little more low key. And they're definitely pretty much letting him try different stuff. You'll see over the course of the 16 issues that he did, except for that one fill-in by Eric Larson. And this is a good example of it, where the cover's very kind of designy, I guess, more so than you know, your typical superhero cover. I don't think it's bad in any way, just not very memorable, I guess is how I'd put it. Memorable for being slightly odd, I guess, in its design. But I think it's a pretty cool looking cover overall. And also what he did at the top here with the lettering, the fact that he was actually able to have them print Spider-Man backwards because it kind of fits with the story. Excuse me, did I say Batman? Spider-Man backwards. Fits with the story because Spider-Man's pretty disoriented in this one. He's been poisoned and drugged, and that kind of affects him throughout the storyline. So that makes sense up there. And something strange is going on here with the letters flipped here and there, just enough so we can, you know, still read what the sentence says here. So all kind of working within the context of the storyline here. So that's the cover. Let's crack her open and have a look inside. So we start, of course, with the old vertical panels, which McFarlane does so well. He's choosing different angles too, where it's like kind of a head-on shot. This is two, obviously two different areas of the city. Here we get kind of a perspective down shot, which is cool. Slight down shot here. So, you know, what makes these fun and interesting is that he's varying the angles and the points of view. Doing a really good job there. I mean, McFarlane's always been pretty good at buildings, I would say. You know, he does great cityscapes. And this is a good shot here too that kind of proves that, right? What a great double page splash. We're still getting the doom dooms from the drums, which I think it should be boom boom, but anyways, just a cool, messy kind of action shot of the lizard kind of pushing, ramming into Spider-Man through a chimney here. Lots of debris. McFarlane's talked about debris before, you know, adding lots of it in there. Fills up a page, makes it look interesting. I think he did a good job here. This could be a really cool poster as well. Pretty busy, but overall I think it's still pretty clear and you can make out what's going on. So good stuff, Todd. So Torment Part 3, artist-writer Todd McFarlane, letters Rick Parker, color Bob Sharon, editor Jim Saligrup. Why am I, never mind about the editor. More ads, kind of annoying. And I will remind everyone that the Spider-Man series was kind of an upgrade. I've talked about it on Wolverine as well with Mark Silvestri. At a certain point, the paper kind of got better and the colors were much better. The less slippage on the plates where, you know, colors kind of move over as opposed to the line. Everything fits really well and is tight color-wise. And the black sits well on the paper where it does get absorbed a little bit and it's not kind of that pure black. But this is kind of peak production value to me for comic books, at least the mainstream stuff. This is a good example of that. The colors are cool. You know, you have to really look really close to see the dots of the printing. You know, you don't just see them offhand because they're so far apart because it's a cheap printing process. They started, you know, putting a bit more money into it, I guess, in these early 90s because comics were becoming really big too. So we got some more conflict, obviously, between the Lizard and Spider-Man. We've got Calypso here, who's always in shadow, and we can barely see. I remember as a kid kind of like having to decipher these images a bit. My visual acuity and language is a bit more developed now, but, you know, it was kind of, this image was kind of hard to work out when you're a kid. You know, I could see the candle, but I'm like, is that her arm, her face? You know, it's a little bit too much, maybe. Love, again, this city shot here. I think this works really well, super effective. And he always tended to exaggerate those buildings, make them very long and skinny and very vertical, which helps to give a sense of the city being super big and tall, right? Yeah, so I think he's probably enjoying this issue because of all this debris and stuff. He's just, you know, throwing so much of it in there. On top of that, there's rain throughout most of this issue. Kind of an interesting way of drawing rain here. I mean, when you take a minute to look at it, it looks a little odd. But as you're reading the story, you just, yeah, I guess it's the beginning, right? Where rain's not quite as thick and there's a few drops kind of falling here and there. Does it start? Maybe, you know, I'm missing some stuff in the storytelling here. Where does the rain start? Okay, starts right off the bat. Yeah, he's doing that same technique here. Interesting. Never really paid that much attention to it, but yeah, how do you draw rain, right? Farlane's got, like I said, it's weird because it's like I accept it as I read the story, don't pay too much attention to it, but when I do pay attention to it, it looks a little odd. It's like, yeah, I don't know how to describe it. Some more manga speed lines here in the background. And we're getting all the cool Spider-Man shots, right? But of course, since the series tries to go a little bit more hardcore, I guess, and eventually, as you'll see by the end of this issue, into horror territory, you know, we're slowly moving towards that. And again, remember, Spider-Man is very confused and disoriented and basically high on some sort of poison, right? He's hallucinating. I like the fact that this tilted angle of the building here, I think, helps to kind of give that sense of off kilter of what's happening in Spider-Man. This is a pretty cool shot graphically, the way he does this, right? With just that bit of line work for Spider-Man's shadow, and everything else is kind of in a negative space with all this lettering in the background. I think that looks really cool right here. You know, at a bigger size and maybe just slightly more detail and stuff, this would be a pretty cool poster. Just this pose, not all of this. Well, I mean, maybe. But specifically that pose, I think, would make a great poster, very graphic cover image, blown up, right? Of course, let's not forget we've got Mary Jane. So what's going on with her? She's waiting for a taxi, right? She's gonna be going out on the town without Peter, I think, in this story, Torment. And Todd McFarlane kind of trying, I guess, what I would call the Alan Moore transition, right? So, you know, two similar elements, but in two different places to obviously transition from one to the other. Some more cool vertical panels. Cropping wise, I still, you know, last episode I talked about Rob Liefeld. Some of his cropping sometimes is a little odd. I think McFarlane is a master cropper. That sounds odd, but he just has a way of cropping with just the right information, and it saves him a lot of drawing too. And it's still very interesting and fun to read and look at as you're going through the story. So of course, Lizard, Spider-Man still fighting. Here we get kind of our first real glimpse of Calypso, you know, a little bit closer. I assume Calypso is a Todd McFarlane creation, right? Pretty sure she is. I don't believe she's had any appearances before this. Yeah, and bring back the McFarlane. Like, McFarlane today, when he does art, I clearly does it on the Procreate board and sometimes uses reference pictures and stuff. Bring back the cartoony kind of, you know, bubbly, interesting McFarlane. Bring that back any day over what he's doing these days. Yeah, this is, again, I think I mentioned it, but this is definitely peak McFarlane, the Spider-Man series, and the issues of Spawn he's going to do, at least for, I think, the first year or so on Spawn. That's peak McFarlane to me. Art-wise, rather, we're right in the thick of it here. Those great buildings. You know, buildings, it's just about, like, he's not even, especially when he does this, it's just a head-on shot, right? There's not a lot of perspective. There's a bit here on the side. He's clever with his use of it, this bit of building here, but all this in the background is not, doesn't have to conform to a grid. This stuff is not that hard. It just takes time, right? That's the thing. You got to pull out the ruler and measure, and this stuff takes time. It's not hard. If you know how to do it, right? If you know the basic principles behind it. A lot of black in this panel. I think is an odd choice, maybe. You know, we get Mary Jane's silhouette, but just barely. Could be Sasquatch, right? Obviously, we understand that it's her here. And off she goes. More good use of the vertical panel. Now he's even opening up this border. You know, in this case, I guess, because most, as you'll notice in the Spider-Man series, the most of the back of the pages are black, right? I think that's a conscious choice. Like, this one isn't because it's Mary Jane, and that's an ad. But all the Spider-Man, Calypso, and Lizard pages are completely blacked out, right? So again, the only pages that are white are the Mary Jane pages, which I think makes sense. It's a storytelling choice for sure. It's done on purpose. So in a case like this, well, because this would usually be white maybe, and this would have the, you know, that regular thick black border, he can't do that, so he has to flip it over, do the negative, leaves that panel open, which is really cool and designy. I think it looks interesting here. How the panels get taller and also wider is pretty cool. And yeah, and then you can go and throw in a bit of color in that border. Great shot here of Spider-Man just, I guess, tripping out and having a horrible time. Some of the water effects I think are pretty good overall. Here, maybe not so much. Looks a little spludgy. But, I mean, we get the idea that it's rain. It's pretty obvious. Now we pull back the camera, which is cool, right? Kind of the same pose. And then, oh, that I just noticed that now. We've got kind of the opposite here with the panel layout here, right? That we had on the previous page. Almost leads me to wonder if maybe these pages should have been opposite, right? And somehow that didn't happen. I could be wrong, but it would almost make sense, right? You'd have kind of a symmetry going on if they were side by side. So what I'm trying to say is this page, for anyone who's not quite sure what I'm trying to say, this page would be here and this page would be here, right? So it'd be like a 2-page spread, and then you'd have that symmetry with these panels on either side. Maybe it's not necessary, but I think that would be cool. I like this part here where McFarlane kind of goes through the Spider-Man origin, and he definitely references a bunch of shots from the original first issue of Amazing Fantasy 15 that Steve Ditko drew. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, this shot, and this shot are basically homages to Ditko stuff. These two, I'm not 100% sure, but this one for sure. And, you know, the look of Peter Parker at this point, which is quite different from what we see in this 90s series of Peter Parker. You know, he's kind of a bit older, a bit cooler. He's got a mullet and stuff. So, you know, not quite the insecure kid that Peter Parker was as a teen. So he makes this, you know, I guess, just like Ditko, very different from what we have today. And I say today in the 90s, you know, the of age Peter Parker in this issue. This page I really like. I think is clever. It's a good silhouette job. Sometimes I feel like he has just slight insecurities and with the silhouettes and just decides to throw a bit of white in here and here. Honestly, I don't think it's necessary. If he had blacked that out here and here, it'd be even stronger. It's not the end of the world. I'm being very nitpicky. It doesn't ruin it for me that much. But I do feel like if it was a full silhouette, it would be even more effective. It'd be kind of a Frank Miller vibe. And again, these buildings in the background. Now he's chosen to that McFarlane thing that he does sometimes with characters where there's like an open space that should be kind of a shadow, but he just leaves open. The colors does something. If you know Todd McFarlane's art, you'll know what I'm talking about. Here he kind of applies it to buildings, and I think it works better on buildings than on maybe human figures or, you know, any kind of figure, lizard or human or anything else. It just seems to work better on the buildings here, or be more effective than when he tries it on actual characters and figures. But I think this is basically, excuse me, a splash page with some insert panels here, more shots of Calypso, right? She always kind of appears in insert panels throughout the story. So once again, Mary Jane waiting for the taxi here. No, getting out of the taxi, excuse me. And as he drives off, getting her all wet. And I can almost guess that he's going to use the water here, you know, as an Alan Moore transition once again. Yeah, there we go. So, you know, it's not water anymore. It's a spider that's kind of with the water, but coming down. Cool kind of design sense, though, to have, again, that insane crop here where you know, look how little he gives us, but we figured out that, oh, that's Spider-Man's mask, right? Just with that little bit of webbing there. He gives us so little, but just enough. And then, of course, because we pull back, it's pretty obvious. Just like all of that, seeing all of that kind of all at once, almost in symbiosis, you know, clues us in that this here is also, you know, a close-up shot of this. The repetition of the spider obviously helps too. It's great stuff. I like the circles all around here to kind of give a sense of his confusion at this point and kind of being disoriented. So he's crawling out of the garbage, and basically we kind of get the page turn reveal here, and this is where it kind of veers into horror territory. Not here on the ads, obviously. That's just a guy searching for something up someone's rectum. That's what that looks like right there. That's an unfortunate angle. But no, here's where we get the horror. And for some reason, Spider-Man is seeing Craven, who a few years prior actually committed suicide. So Todd's really pushing it with the Craven figure here, and you know, most of his head being missing here. He's going really far into the horror aspect here, more so I think than Spider-Man has ever been. To even, you know, during the 70s when horror comics were very kind of popular and there were horror elements like Morbius the Living Vampire and Spider-Man getting 6 arms, that right there is a little more gruesome and probably a little more objected to by parents back in the day, at least some parents who are, you know, maybe buying some Spider-Man comics for their kids and not realizing that, you know, there's this kind of graphic visual violence being shown off. Also, weird choice. Craven usually has pants, and now he's just got kind of a loincloth. You know, I'm assuming his buttocks are exposed. Maybe we'll find out more next issue. But yeah, just kind of an odd choice to me. But that's where we're going to leave it today, because that is, you know, horror Craven, and we'll find out more about him next issue. I know there's a cool shot, you know, that kind of repeats this moment, and we'll talk more about that than this here, because you know, what is there to say that you can't see for yourself there? You're either into this kind of stuff or not. You know, it's gross, but I mean, as a kid back in the day, it's definitely cool, right? That's the kind of stuff we were into. So there you have it, my review of Spider-Man number 3 by Todd McFarlane. If you have any questions, comments on this issue, let me know down below. Thank you so much for checking the video. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so before. And I hope everyone out there has a great day.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.